Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
For millions of parents, the frantic search for formula is getting closer to home.
It's scary. It's scary not knowing if you're going to be able to feed your kid.
And the shortage is growing. 43% of the nation's baby formula supply is out of stock.
There was one day that I went to 11 different stores and could not find any.
Overnight, the White House announced new steps to address the crisis as President Biden met with retailers and manufacturers, including Walmart, Target, Rickett, and Gerber.
Our message to parents is we hear you. We want to do everything we can.
The administration is facing growing pressure.
This is not a third world country. This should never happen in the United States of America.
The new measures include increasing imports of formula, cutting red tape, and asking regulators in states to crack down on price gouging. But the White House acknowledged there is no timeline for when parents can expect to see the results on the shelves.
We would certainly encourage any parent who has concerns about their child's health or well-being to call their doctor or pediatrician.
For many families, the need is dire. According to the CDC, only 25% of infants consume only breast milk through their first 6 months, and many rely on specific formula brands.
I've seen moms in the store crying in the formula aisle because they can't find their baby's formula.
Inventories are now so low that some major stores have put limits on how much baby formula you can buy at a time. The months-long shortage comes from a voluntary recall by manufacturer Abbott Nutrition that prompted the shutdown of a major plant, all of it made worse by supply chain issues. Now, parents are scrambling for solutions. Online, searches for homemade formula have spiked, but experts warn against making your own or diluting formula, as both could be harmful for your baby.
Okay, so I have a question. Happy Friday, you bastards. Happy Friday the 13th, you bastards. Oh, and by the way, I don't know the rules on Friday the 13th, so maybe you do. If bad things are already happening on Friday the 13th, do they get worse, or do new bad things happen on Friday? I'm not sure. I think it's personal bad things happen, but the government is already up in our uterus now, so how much more personally bad can it get? And we have a monopoly that controls all the baby food, all the baby formula. So here's my question, okay? Here's my question. Prior to, let's say, Abbott Laboratories or Nestle or Reckitt Benckiser, I don't know. What did we feed our kids? What did we feed our kids? I'm not really sure, like, what we fed our kids, because apparently all we know how to do is feed our kids Infamil. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure I remember my mother cooking, and I don't want to give you advice. Really, I don't. Call your pediatrician, because this could sound to you like ivermectin. You know, it could. And I don't want to do that. I'm not going to say UV lights up your bum or your baby's bum or, drink bleach. No. So call your pediatrician if you have a child and you're not breastfeeding your child, and instead you're looking for an alternative that you could buy at a box store. I don't know. But for those of us who are a little bit older, who probably were raised in a world where there wasn't formula on the shelf. There wasn't Infamil. There wasn't Similac. I don't know. What did our parents feed us? How did we survive? How are we alive? How did I live? How did I cope? How did I deal? I don't know. Now, I have a child, Jessica, who's well into her 30s now, you understand, but I did not have her. Okay? I did not give birth. She is, for those of you who are confused and maybe only found our show in the last 5 years in this incarnation, she's my sister's little baby. And some of you know that my sister died very early. My sister died when she was only 44 years old. And so I finished raising Jessica. But trust me, by the time I got Jessica, by the time I looked at my, husband and I said, honey, guess what? We're having a teenager. She was not on the Infamil or the Similac or anything like that. And I do know my sister breastfed her. So I know that because I babysat her from the time she was, like 2 or 3. And I remember, before that, my sister could hardly go anywhere because, she had to breastfeed. So I know that much. But I also remember my mother making formula. I remember that. And I remember my mother teaching us how to make formula. And so I'm not really sure, what is it that we don't know how to do anymore to feed babies? Okay, that said, I will tell you that the right wing, the pro-life, the uber Christians, the, very much in love with the zygote, the fetus, the petri dish, and everything that occurs in the petri dish, including in vitro fertilization, which will be off the radar. I mean, you will not be able to do IVF because you understand to do in vitro fertilization. You have to actually have eggs and sperm and fertilize them and then put the fertilized in vitro. That's what in vitro fertilization means. And in that a particular procedure, you have to create embryos. You have to create fertilized eggs, let's just say. And some of them won't make it. And of course, that's not going to be okay with the Christians who love the zygote, who love the fertilized egg. But once you're born, I have said this for 20 years, once you're born, you're on your own. Everybody knows it. They love the fetus. They hate the child. They don't want to pay for the child. They don't want to help the child. And that includes children from other countries as well. It includes Ukrainian children at this point. It includes, children who are at the southern border, not on our side of the southern border, you understand, because we still have Title 42 in place, which is a pandemic barrier that eliminates the ability for people from other countries from applying for asylum at the southern border. So when everybody's screaming about they have formula that they've delivered to the southern border for the babies from Mexico or whatever the hell they're talking about, you realize what they're saying to you is that babies that aren't born here can die for lack of, formula. That's number one, how very pro-life, how very Christian of you. But number two, I actually drilled a little deeper into that, and I found out that there are no babies on our side of the southern border because of Title 42. All we have is single adults at the southern border, on our side of the southern border. And so when you see reprehensible, disgusting, heinous, ugly, hateful Congress members tweeting out pictures of pallets of, a baby formula that are there for the babies that are on our side of the southern border, just know there are no babies on our side of the southern border. That's number one. And number two, that they are for babies starving in our custody if they're not American born. I don't understand this. I mean, I can't put the whole scenario together in my head. Like, how could they get away with tweeting this crap out and not see everybody in this country who is pro-life tweeting back at them? Wait, are you saying that babies could die, that babies should die, that we shouldn't feed them if they're in our custody, but they're from another country? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you mean? Is that what you were doing when you tweeted out pictures and this claim that pallets of formula, as if Joe Biden was literally trying to kill American children in favor of brown babies, which is the goal of having that talking point available to them. So you think about that. You have Republican members of Congress, women from Florida, the one that did it, she's a woman from Florida, tweeting out a photo, a fake one, of baby formula for brown babies, but not white ones.
Things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
And let's let the conspiracy theories begin.
So it's the FDA regulatory action that's keeping this plant closed. Now, Bill Gates, his fund, Breakthrough Energy Ventures, and Jeff Bezos is on the board. Mark Zuckerberg is on the board. Richard Branson is on the board. They've put $3.5 million into a company called BioMilk, with a Q at the end, in North Carolina to make artificial breast milk. So a technocratic, non-human, perhaps cursed, demonic kind of milk that they hope to have on the market within the next couple of years. So in addition to Bill Gates's, mosquito army and his attempt to block the sun, basically he's just like the peanut allergy table in the high school cafeteria as a worldwide supervillain.
Okay, so it's a demonic formula, everybody. It's going to be demon's milk. Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and, Branson, they're going to milk devil's boobs or some such thing. They're going to have, milk bars of demons, and they're going to, feed your babies the demon's milk. And your babies will apparently have poo that smells like sulfur now. I don't know. Maybe they'll attract flies. This is so sick and twisted. But here's the thing. If you are really freaked out that there could be a 43% shortage of anything in this country, especially baby formula, shouldn't you be on my side of the aisle? Shouldn't you be with me on the antitrust legislation that I so desperately want to see happen? Shouldn't you be anti-monopoly? Shouldn't you be aware now that only 3 companies on this, in this country manufacture baby formula? Shouldn't you be with me saying that's just ridiculously wrong, that if one plant in Sturgis, Michigan, if one Abbott Laboratories plant, which showed up with Coronabacter Shakazaki, swear to God I had to memorize that, Coronabacter Shakazaki bacteria in the factory, to the point where babies got sick, 2 babies died from Coronabacter Shakazaki bacteria infection, shouldn't you be freaked out that one factory in Sturgis, Michigan gets closed down for bacterial infectors, in the food, and that could cause 43% less availability of baby formula in America? Shouldn't that spark some sort of instead of saying, I watched women cry in the aisle and I just women don't know what to do and they're Googling how to make a formula they don't know. Our young mothers have no idea how kids like me grew up without formula. Kids like me grew up without Infamil. They have no earthly idea. But shouldn't everybody be outraged that could happen? That one offline factory could do that? Could actually cause empty shelves in this here country? Now, I will tell you, Joe Biden is looking at invoking the Defense Production Act for manufacturers of baby formula to force them to manufacture baby formula. To make them do 24/7 manufacturing, to make them, do what we need to be done to feed our children with baby formula. I mean, this is just so twisted. I can't even, and of course, this goes back to living under the previous president's ridiculously twisted, poorly thought through policies that we don't have 60 votes to undo. But remember, we're not allowed now to import baby formula, even though it comports with FDA regulations from Canada or from Europe. We're not allowed to do it. There's a 17% tax on it. So if you're already paying anywhere from $150 a month, I mean, I looked at the prices of the formula on the shelves there in that report. I mean, some of the prices they're astronomical. I mean, I saw everything from $35, $32 all the way up to $80 for a can of dehydrated milk with some sugar in it and some iron. because that's kind of what baby formula is. It's dehydrated cow's milk, it's vitamins, and a ton of sugar. And, the European version of baby formula doesn't have that much, corn syrup in it. It doesn't have that much high fructose corn syrup in it, so it's probably better. But there's a 17% tax on the import of that. And so if you're already paying, anywhere from $150 to $450 a month for this formula, then you're going to have to add another 20% to it because of the import tax. Because we love our babies. Because we love the baby. All right, Tim in West Virginia.
Yeah, goat's milk.
Goat's milk, yeah.
Yes, well, when I was a baby, I couldn't even drink my mom's milk very much.
You had a milk allergy.
Yes, and goat's milk does away with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because for one thing, cow's milk is saturated fat. Goat milk is unsaturated fat. So it's better for anything anyway.
Well, bring the goats. Where do I get a goat?
At the auction.
No,
because
I'm not zoned, but I'm not zoned for goats. I'm not even zoned for a chicken. I have to buy my eggs.
I'm just telling you, and the same thing you was talking about with the sugar.
Yeah.
You just use a tiny bit of Cairo.
Oh, Cairo syrup. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, we done that. For babies, for me.
So that's what I'm asking. I'm asking some of the women who are around my age, like, what did you do to feed your baby back in the day? Because I didn't have any. So I don't know exactly, what was to be done. I only know what happened in my family. Okay. I know my mother made formula. I remember it was like a pot of boiling water on the stove. I think it was evaporated milk and probably Cairo syrup or some sort of corn syrup, right? And
that's right.
Right, and then they would stick that in a bottle and then boil the bottle in boiling water on the stove, and then take that bottle or those bottles, because they used to sell like these things where you could separate 6 bottles to put it over in the boiling water, and then put the bottles in the refrigerator. I don't understand why are we?
Well, see, that's all we ever did. Yeah, that's right. All we did was just strain the milk, and when you warm it for the baby or heat it, you're pasteurizing it.
Right.
So it's ready. It's ready.
So this
right
is what I'm
goat.
saying. I don't understand why this is a thing, except to say that we have, people in this country that don't know jack crap about the corporate oligarchy that we have in this country. They don't know. They're mad at the president of the United States for private industry owning a monopoly on baby formula. Somehow the president of the United States is a bastard. I don't even get this. I don't get this. But I'm pretty sure we had a world before Infamil.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
You said that the administration is doing everything it can. Ron Klain, Chief of Staff, told Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger that the White House is strongly considering using the Defense Production Act to address this. Beyond just all options are on the table, what are the criteria? What gets it from a strong consideration to an execution that we're going to do this to help these families?
If the president determines that's what we need to do to ramp up production, and that's the only way we can ramp up production and make sure that it's available and make sure that it's affordable, that's his consideration. What I don't want to do is just make this assumption that if he invokes the Defense Production Act, there'll be more formula tomorrow.
Sure.
And we should not say that, because I think that would imply that there's some switch we can pull. And so Defense Production Act will ramp up over time. And what we're doing right now is putting that pressure on CEOs immediately so that they can start ramping up today and tomorrow. And if that doesn't work, then you look at the long-term implementation of a Defense Production Act. But When you see the president on the phone with those manufacturers of baby formula, that's him saying we want more product and we want more right now.
So, you have to understand that if women can't find formula, right? If they're going into Target or they're going into Walmart or they're going into the big box store and the shelves are empty and there's no baby formula, they're going to be furious. And they don't know who to blame. So they're going to believe anybody that steps up to the microphone. This is a terrible situation to be in. Terrible. Because it isn't the president's fault. It is capitalism's fault. It is the monopolistic, oligarchical system that we have that allows for a monopoly to control an entire marketplace of oil and gas, an entire marketplace of baby formula, an entire marketplace of meat. I mean, this happened. This all happened, during the COVID pandemic. It happened with paper towels. It happened with toilet paper. It happened with meat production, to the point where Mike Pence, in the middle of people literally dropping like flies in New York when this pandemic first slammed into the United States, Mike Pence got on a stage at the White House and told the meatpacking workers to just go to work. Just go to work and do your job. Do you remember that? I don't know if you do.
I did hear from the industry today that there have been reports of some plants having reduced capacity because of people having concerns about exposure to the coronavirus. In fact, over the last several days, there's been some incidents of worker absenteeism, and some plants have actually been forced to close temporarily. And so on behalf of the president, on behalf of our entire team, and on behalf of a grateful nation, let me just say to all of you that are working in the food industry at every level across the country, just understand that you are vital. You are giving a great service to the people of the United States of America. And we need you to continue as a part of what we call our critical infrastructure to show up and do your job.
Show up and do your job. Now, this was to meatpacking plants. This was to the meat packers, the people who work elbow to elbow, the people who didn't get PPE, the people who couldn't get anything to protect their lives. They couldn't get, separators, the individual visors that they couldn't get, and they started to die. In the meatpacking plants, they started to die because they told them, just go.
This morning, a growing number of major meat processing plants are closed because of coronavirus. The latest, Smithfield Foods in South Dakota, a state where there is no stay-at-home order. The company shut down this plant in Sioux Falls after more than 430 employees tested positive. A quick response team from the Centers for Disease Control now on site.
We feed millions of people every day.
Smithfield President and CEO Kevin Sullivan in a video statement.
We can't stay home. We can't telecommute. Food, after all, does not get made on the internet.
78-year-old Saul Sanchez is one of 3 workers from a different company's meat processing plant who died from the virus.
It's just hard to put into words how betrayed I feel. Like, here's my dad, who was a very loyal employee in a company that did not take care of him.
His daughter believes not enough is being done to protect these workers critical to the nation's food supply. What protections, if any, did your father get at work?
None.
No PPE?
No PPE.
Health officials say Sanchez, like other industry workers, are vulnerable because employees often work elbow to elbow. The North American Meat Institute, which represents the industry, saying our members are tackling COVID-19 one day at a time.
Yeah, and it turned out that hundreds of meatpacking employees died. They died because, just go to work. Just go to work. It's just show up, do your job, do your job, do your job. I mean, people have learned nothing about the supply chain. People have learned nothing about manufacturing in this country. And people have learned nothing about the need to trust bust. They have learned nothing about the conglomerates that buy everything that competes with them, and either they rebrand it and, sell it as theirs, or they shelve it to get it out of the marketplace. The idea that we could have one plant that makes baby formula go offline and see a 43% shortage of baby formula in this country. This ought to teach everybody the lesson of oligarchs, the lesson of consolidation, the lesson of conglomeration, the lesson of putting so much power into so few hands. That during we had all kinds of troubles with meat because we only have a few. We only have a very generous count of meat production companies: JBS, Tyson, Smithfield, Hormel. I think we have 6 that make all of our pork, our chicken, and our meat. 6 in a country of 300 million people and lots of farmland. Lots and lots of places to have goats and chickens and cattle and milk cows and all the things. Why is that? Why would that be? Well, you know who wrote the executive order that opened up the meatpacking plants? Do you know who actually wrote it? The one that Trump signed? It was written by Tyson Foods. They got to write the executive order and hand it to him, and he signed it. Now, that is so unbelievably oligarchical. That is so unbelievably un-American that one company could hand an order to a president. You understand the problems we have are totally fixable. But the corporate money doesn't want them fixed. This is why you're paying $5, $6, $7 a gallon at the gas pump. This is why we have this rampant inflation in this country. It's because we only have a bunch of multinational conglomerates controlling all of our oil and gas.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
The FDA and the Department of Agriculture have been working with these companies for months to increase the supply. It may not have been public, but it's been a diligent effort to try to get them to increase supply both by the FDA and the Department of Agriculture. We saw the president call manufacturers and retailers to personally urge them to ramp up supply. We've expanded the types of formulas that families can buy. We're going to cut the red tape so that we can import more. Yay. We're going to do everything we can because we understand the vulnerability there and the anxiety that it creates in families when you can't get your hands on baby formula.
It's true. I remember, the anxiety I had when I couldn't get chicken cutlets. So can you imagine that you can't get baby formula and you have no idea what baby formula is made of? What a generation. All right, Tony in Las Vegas.
Hi, Randy. Thanks for having me on. My point today is, or my question most of all to you is, with all these things popping up coming into the midterm elections, I see that there's so many issues popping up, and how are we going to educate the electorate? Because, on top of people not knowing how the U.S. government works, I see it. My conservative family, they're posting, blaming Biden for the gas, blaming Biden for the inflation. It's a responsibility also of the mainstream media, but I don't see it. I don't see us being properly informed coming into these midterms.
Well, it just depends on where they get their information. Are they getting their news feed from Twitter? Are they getting their news feed from Facebook? Are they getting it from cable television? This is the problem. We have so much, so many platforms with so much disinformation and misinformation and misdirection, when truly what we have here are two of the same. We have two issues. We have freedom and we have democracy. And they're both the same. They're the same thing. With the freedom, it's about the abortion issue is going to be huge because, look, the Supreme Court hasn't ruled yet, right? The ruling will come in June whether it was leaked or not, it doesn't matter. The ruling will come in June, and it's going to affect at least half of this population, okay? And they're going to sit up and they're going to say, holy crap. The other thing, the inflation, is the same thing. It's the same thing. It's about gouging. It's about monopolies. It's about people having so much market share and crowding out everybody else from being able to compete with them, either by, buying them or shelving them or what. And this is these two issues should be the issues for the election.
I think the Democratic Party just needs to get their messaging in line, because I see that also as a problem. I don't see the Democrats out there like the Republicans are. I mean, the Republicans are all over, screaming all over.
They're all over because what they spread is hatred, blame, and disappointment. Always, they're always disappointed. They're always angry. And that's easy to communicate. The solutions to the problems are a little more difficult, but the problems are the same problems over and over. And they're a problem of freedom and a problem of gouging. And so now there's a full-on frontal attack on females' freedom, right? Freedom of choice, freedom to, decide with whom you'd like to start a family. I mean, freedom is totally on the ballot. Democracy is totally on the ballot. They have done everything they can to carve up these districts. Now, explaining all that is a little more difficult than screaming and yelling.
I tried having a discussion, but either I get a response based on the Bible, which at that point it doesn't really apply.
But the Bible has nothing to do with gouging,
exactly.
and it has nothing to do with privacy. This issue that's being foisted upon women, this removal of their constitutionally protected right to privacy, has nothing to do with religion. It's not a religious issue. It's a constitutionally protected right to privacy. And if people think that they can look in the Bible for the solution to constitutionally protected right to privacy, they're not going to find it there. What they can find there is their decision. Their decision. Do they want to have an abortion? Do they not want to have an abortion? Do they want to beat their children? Do they want to spare the rod? Do they, that's what they could find in the Bible. But they're not going to be able to find privacy protection in the Bible, okay? And that is what this case is about. And if they think it's only going to affect women or poor women or what, they're wrong, because men will lose their privacy too. And what does that mean? That means we're headed down the road to a surveillance state. It means that everything that you do, whether you are on your phone, whether you think you're having a private conversation, whether you think you're having a private text message, whether you think you're having a private Facebook page or a group or a discussion, no, it's no longer private.
Well, yeah, all these people complaining about their privacy and all that all over Twitter and all this stuff, it's just nonsense. And some of these same people complaining about Trump getting kicked out of Twitter and all, yelling privacy and my own freedom and all this stuff, they don't realize they're supporting this Roe v. Wade thing, which is also taking away privacy as well. It doesn't just apply to women. They can just use that.
Okay. So see, here's a problem. And everybody needs to get clear on this, and whatever you want to do to talk to your family and friends, I don't know. But privacy is a constitutionally protected right, meaning the government, which is what's happening here with this decision, can't take away your right to privacy without due process. But it doesn't say anything about a private company, protecting your privacy. Those are two completely different issues. And when people conflate them and think that, Twitter is the awesome government, or that Twitter is not a private company, and that the government, which is what's taking away a woman's right to privacy, is the all encompassing, all powerful being in this conversation. If they can't delineate between a private company having rules about what you can say at work, right, or harassing women at work, versus the United States government saying that women don't have any choice in who they're going to have children with. Women don't have any choice in, their health. Women don't have any choice with when they want to start a family anymore. If they think that Twitter is the same as the government in that situation, then I don't know what to say.
Yeah, you can't even have a discussion with them. And
well, don't say you can't. Maybe
yeah.
you've been unable to, but now you
right.
should be
You're right.
armed and ready to have that conversation by saying
Very
Twitter is a private company. What I'm talking to you about is the U.S. government taking away constitutionally protected rights.
Perfect. One more thing. My grandma raised 12 children in Mexico on boiled cow's milk and all of that. She did fine. She didn't have any formula or anything.
I mean, I don't know what I don't know how people can't remember that there was a time in recent history where we're alive, most of us were alive, where there wasn't formula.
We had something called leche nido from Mexico. You probably heard of it.
No, what was it?
It's leche nido. It's almost it's also like cow milk, but it's dried. It's dehydrated. And
that's
the baby.
That's what evaporated milk is. It's milk. It's milk with a lot of the water removed from it, because when babies get too much water, they get gastroenteritis. Their belly hurts. Okay, they get gassy and they get they're uncomfortable. So that's why. It's not boil it to get rid of the water. It's boil it to get rid of impurities. Okay, and so that's why you start with evaporated milk, which I know you have in Mexico because you make tres leches with it. So yeah.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, And tenga buen día. Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, gracias. Con mucho gusto. But I mean, honestly, this is crazy on two fronts. One, that we have people who are raising children who don't have any earthly idea how to feed their children, without Enfamil or without, buying something off the store shelf. That's bizarre to me. That is unforgivable, actually. But the other thing is that they still don't realize how so few people, so few corporate entities manufacture the necessities of life in this country. They just still don't get it. Now, we went through meat shortages, we went through toilet paper shortages, and now we're going through baby formula shortages, and it's all because there's too few people, too few corporations involved in manufacturing the necessities of life in this country, and that's by design. And it's a poor design. It's a design that is going to let you down whenever anything happens, an emergency happens, whether it's a Sturgis, Michigan plant going offline because of bacteria, or it's because people can't go to work because there's a virus circulating and they're dying. And you only have 6 companies responsible for the pork and for the beef and for the chicken. All of it. It's wrong.
Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Thank you, Jen. Sorry to see you go.
Are you?
For how long has the administration been spying on people's Facebook profiles looking for vaccine misinformation?
Well, that was quite a loaded and inaccurate question.
Is there a carve-out in CDC regulations for COVID for vice president?
Tell me more, Peter. I'm sure this is going somewhere. Where are people coming from who are coming to the border, Peter?
The president said that
I'm asking you a question because I think people should understand the context. Where do people
I'm asking you.
Okay, I'll answer it for you. People come from Central America and Mexico.
Are you now admitting that the plan does not cost zero, or is it less than zero?
Well, let's not dumb this down for the American public here.
You can say that that's going to be the guidance forever.
I am not the CDC director.
I understand, but people don't care who tells them to wear a mask.
They should care.
Does he own an electric vehicle?
Presidents of the United States don't do a lot of driving.
Is the administration going to follow up with school districts to make sure that the abolitionist teaching network material is not in lesson plans?
Well, just to be clear, for the context, because I know you love context.
Whatever happened to President Biden's promise to shut down the virus?
We're working on it, Peter. Do you have an alternative suggestion for how they should be tracked?
I, unfortunately, have not been asked to make U.S. immigration policy. That's not
Today's your moment.
He said, I will not do what this president, former President Trump does, and use the Justice Department as my vehicle to insist that something happen.
Well, since you give me the opportunity here, former President Trump used his office to incite an insurrection. He put political pressure on senior DOJ officials to propagate lies about the election to the point where they threatened to resign en masse. I think there's hardly a comparison there.
Please take Peter with you. So Jen Psaki, today was her last day at the podium. She is no longer going to be Joe Biden's press secretary.
I feel like there was like a weird Batman and Joker vibe between her and Ducey. Like,
Douchey is what he is. You know, he would, ask her these loaded questions out of context, and they would banter. They would,
yeah, that's it. I think they kind of fed off each other, like a weird codependency thing going on. I think they kind of enjoyed it.
You know what it was like? It's like the Philadelphia Story. It's like those old 1940s movies where you had the smart, beautiful female executive. It was usually they made her a reporter. Okay. It was like one of the sort of acceptable professions for a woman in the 40s was to be a journalist. And they would always have to, be sharper and faster and quicker and quippier than, and wittier than the men that they worked with in order to be acceptable in their positions. And that's what Douchey brought to the White House, was this crazy idea that Jen had to be smarter, she had to be quicker, she had to be badder, she had to be, just because, he was working for Fox News and looking for sound bites. And she constantly put him in his place, which is at the bottom of the totem pole where the dog lifts its leg. If media is a totem pole, I used to say this all the time about radio because I was in radio. And people would say, well, aren't you in show business? And I would say, well, I'm in radio. And if show business is a totem pole, radio is where the dog lifts its leg. And that's pretty much what has happened to cable news. If show business is a totem pole, then cable news is where the dog lifts its leg. David in Oregon. Hey, David.
Hey there. How are you doing?
Good.
All right. Well, good. Hey, I was listening to your show and wanted to comment about multinationals and the lack of baby food.
Huh. Okay.
All right. Well, sorry. So, yeah, I think, the multinationals, with their conglomeration of the production, is a definite problem. And with respect to the lack of baby food, my thought is that women should think back to the times, maybe back in the mid-'60s, when there wasn't any baby food. And so maybe they should assess options from back in that day to get them through this point where there's a restriction of supply.
The thing with this baby formula thing is that there is a lack of being able to invent your way out of a bad situation, number one. And number two, that you could lose 43% of the supply of anything in this country if one plant gets taken offline. Is a problem. And it's a problem of corporate consolidation here in the United States. It is a problem of monopolistic practices. And what we really need here is trust busting. Trust busting would alleviate so much of the inflation that we see, which is an issue. It is probably the issue that is on voters' minds going into the midterms now. once the Supreme Court weighs in on whether or not women have privacy rights in this country. And it's interesting that this is the way they chose to decide this case, was to take away privacy rights. It's just so informative as to what the future in America might look like for all Americans who think they have some right to privacy. And all of a sudden one day they're going to wake up and find out they don't. Just like all of a sudden you're waking up and you're finding out that if one plant in this country, in Sturgis, Michigan, is offline, then you lose 43% of the supply of baby formula. That's because the way that corporate America has designed the system in this country through giving money and purchasing senators and purchasing legislation and purchasing the Supreme Court at this point is not working for us. And if you are part of us, the U.S., and you're part of the citizenry, then it's time for you to wake the F up and realize that one party is the party of corporate prowess, is the party of this system, and the other party is not. There are corporate Democrats. There are some. But as a platform, we don't say corporations could have, corporations are people, my friend. We don't say corporations have more of a right to freedom and free speech than you do. We don't say money is speech. They do. And this is where that philosophy of the Republican Party has gotten us to. This is where we ended up. We ended up with 6 people who produce all of our food, 6 people who produce all of our meat, 6 people who produce, 4 people that produce all of our baby formula, and 5 media companies that control all the information. This is it's such a terrible result, and how Americans don't get it yet. And by that, I mean the 30% that are MAGA or the 50% that think this is Biden's fault with the baby formula. I don't understand how people don't orient themselves with the fact that corporations are not people and that they're saying that they are has produced this result. That so much of everything that we need to live, so much of everything we rely on to be there for our lives is controlled by so few people. I don't understand what it's going to take for them to wake up, but you know what? I just don't care anymore.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Retailers to impose purchasing limits to prevent the possibility of hoarding, because we know that that is an issue.
Why didn't we have hoarding during the Trump administration?
What?
Absolutely. This is remarkable.
What? I still have toilet paper from the Trump administration. I still have paper towels that I hoarded. You? Yeah, we all hoarded.
I literally just ran out of my toilet paper stockpile. Just ran out.
I mean, they just sit there and they actually tell you, don't believe what you just lived through. Don't believe that you hoarded. Don't believe that your own stockpile of toilet paper in the garage is real. I'm telling you there was no hoarding during the Trump administration. I'm telling you there were no empty shelves during the Trump administration. I'm telling you there were no meat shortages. I'm telling you there was no toilet paper or paper towel shortages or paper plate shortages. I'm telling you that this is all a new phenomenon of shortages. No. This is a corporate manipulation of a market. Does anybody believe that one factory in Sturgis, Michigan is responsible for 43% of all the baby formula in this here country? Does anybody believe that? This is what they're telling us. And they're telling us that because they want to point to, for a 2-day headline, for a 2-day talking point, they want to say that Biden is sending the baby formula to Mexicans. I swear to God. All this to gin up resentment and hostility and hatred and just anger and rage in this country. It's so unbelievable when the real problem that we have are monopolies who control entirely too much of things that we all rely on to live our lives. Period. And that would be media, and that would be meat, and that would be chicken, and that would be pork, and that would be baby formula and paper products and everything else that goes along with it. You have a handful of giant corporations controlling those things, and you've just lived through that being an issue for you and your household and your family. And now they're telling you that didn't happen. It's only happening now. Why didn't we have that during the Trump administration? I mean, honestly, it's mind blowing. It's such it's a sexual mind thing, you know, because I can't say the F word. Terry in Oregon.
Hi.
Hey.
I'm 73 years old, but there was canned baby formula when I had my 3 children. But my brother was born in 1943 in San Francisco, and there was some kind of dysentery in all the babies, and my mom had to boil barley, regular barley grain in this water and then strain it out and mix that with canned milk every time my brother was introduced to a new food, even through his teenage years. So I know that was a baby formula that they used back in the early 40s. Barley water and canned milk, or canned milk and Karo syrup was the one I knew of.
It was evaporated milk.
Yeah, evaporated milk, right.
Right. And you could still do it. I mean, I said,
so
I don't even want to. I don't even want to tell people, like how to feed their kids. Okay, because I really don't. Yeah. It's like I wouldn't even tell you about your pet. I'm not going to tell you about your baby.
Absolutely, I agree. Or we have another ivermectin thing.
Right,
but their
exactly.
doctors should be able to tell them how to make a baby formula.
I mean, I remember seeing it on the stove. I remember seeing the pan of boiling water, and it had like this insert, and the insert had 6 holes in it, and the holes were for the bottles, and you'd put 6 bottles.
You had to sterilize. Yeah, we had to sterilize our bottles. There was no.
No, not just the bottles. Not just the bottles. You'd put the evaporated milk and the Karo syrup, okay, in the bottles, and then put the bottles in the boiling water, and then put the bottles in the refrigerator. And that's how they made baby formula.
Yeah.
So,
canned milk and Karo syrup, yeah.
Right.
And then, like I said, I remember my brother, even in high school, if he had, the first time he had cottage cheese, he'd get that dysentery all over, and she'd have to boil that barley water.
Oh, so he was lactose intolerant even back then.
Yeah, well, it was something that he got in the hospital when he was born, and I guess all the babies had it, and every time he had a new food. So he'd eat, poached eggs and toast every day for 2 years, rather than eat something new for fear that he'd get sick again.
Yeah, but he wasn't a baby then.
No, even I remember when he was a teenager, she'd have to boil that barley water and, strain the barley and then make the canned milk, and he'd have to drink that in order for his stomach to calm down, and slowly introduce even, canned fruit.
Well, it's just been a tiny slice of heaven getting in your older brother's intestines, so thank you for that. I really appreciate the visual I just got. No, I'm talking about baby formula. I'm talking about feeding a baby. Now, I don't know why breastfeeding has gone the way of, bustles. I don't know why it's fallen out of fashion. But I remember having radio shows, so this is modern history, where women were asking for breastfeeding rooms at work, or breastfeeding, and some malls actually started to have these sort of mobile homes. They were little tiny ones where women could go in and they could breastfeed their babies so that men didn't have to see it, because it was just so upsetting for a man. But back in the day, women would just whip it out. Put a little cloth over you and do it on the bus. I don't know how that faded from, I don't know, because I never had to breastfeed because I never had a baby. I was never lactating. But, leave it to the Republicans. They'll come up with milk bars where seriously, women that, will be adjudicated guilty of adultery or something, they'll have to go and be wet nurses to the rich people, or they'll have to go to a milk bar and be milked like cows so that the babies can have the fresh breath. I don't know, but I mean, they're just so twisted. And then you'll have Nestle come and buy all the milk bars with all the slave women in it, the wet nurses. I mean, yes, it sounds dystopian because this whole attack on women is dystopian. The war in Ukraine is dystopian. You think about people having to hide out in a freaking steel factory in a it's a fairly modern democracy, Ukraine is. I mean, 30 years, they've been practicing, independence, democracy, trying to get rid of the oligarchs, trying to get rid of the corporate, raiders that were infused on them or were insinuated on them through Russia, right? And here they are trying to break free. And now they're living in a dystopian hell. You know, today, the first war crime was charged in the Ukrainian slaughter. And it's really sad because the kid is a kid. He's 21 years old. He's the first Russian soldier to go on trial for war crimes because this kid, who's probably from some freaking beet farm in rural Russia, who was conscripted into the military for $30 a month, him and his friend killed a 62-year-old man at a gas station by shooting him in the back. And they didn't do it for any other reason except to loot, to steal from the gas station because they were so freaking hungry. This is vile. This is dystopian.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Overnight, Russia threatening that it may retaliate if Sweden and Finland join NATO, telling a British news podcast it would be the worst solution for them.
It means that Finland and Sweden all of a sudden, instead of neutral countries, become part of the enemy, and they bear all the risks.
And the deputy ambassador also appearing to threaten NATO.
If there are NATO detachments in this territory, so this territory would become a target, a possible target for a strike.
Finland's border with Russia is more than 800 miles long, and as Russia ramps up its rhetoric against countries seeking to join NATO,
most part of the sheltering persons will be coming inside the shelter in this way.
Finland and its citizens are now preparing bunkers across the country. The US and other NATO members support the two Scandinavian countries joining the military alliance.
It's good for our security around the world, and certainly having a strong partnership with a range of countries, including Sweden and Finland.
But Russia says NATO expansion is a threat, using it as a pretext to invade Ukraine. And this is what Putin's war is doing to the people of this land. In Zaporizhia, in the east, Ludmila picks through what remains of her home. All that's left is ruins, she says. I don't even know where to start. And in the northern Chernihiv region, images emerging of the destruction there. More school buildings coated in dust.
Schools.
What can be achieved by destroying Ukrainian schools, says President Zelensky. All Russian commanders who give such orders are simply sick and incurable. And in Mariupol, as another day of missile strikes rock the Avastal steel plant, the far-right Azov regiment, now part of Ukraine's armed forces, releasing video overnight from the area. An up-close view of war from the soldiers on the ground. Their families now demanding action.
Save Azovstal!
As Ukraine's deputy prime minister saying her country is conducting very difficult negotiations to evacuate 38 heavily wounded fighters from the steel plant.
Well, the defenders in Mariupol releasing a statement this morning saying that they are under attack again, that Russian armoured vehicles are storming the plant. Meanwhile, the first court case against a Russian charged with murdering a civilian has begun in Kyiv. Prosecutors here telling us expect many more of them to come.
Really? So this is, first of all, I can't believe Finland and Sweden are in the news. And we're not talking about sturgeon. Do you know? I mean, how bizarre is that? How strange is it that Finland is in the news and it's not about some young hockey, prospect or sturgeon or caviar or anything like that? I mean, it is amazing. So Finland and Sweden now are talking about joining NATO. I guess Putin really thought that one through. You know, he did not invade Ukraine because Ukraine was talking about or thinking about or anything about NATO. No, he did this because he dehumanized Ukrainians as being people that didn't deserve to live, that they needed to be exterminated, erased from what he considers to be Russian land. And that's why he's turned that place into a hellhole, a dystopian hellhole, where you have, people literally sheltering, hiding in tunnels underneath a steel plant for 2 months. People are literally living in subways in Kharkiv. They're literally living subterranean lives because of Russian lunacy. So yesterday in the United States Senate, the deliberative body, there was a vote. It had passed the House with remarkable support, and it was about to go through the Senate to give humanitarian aid and more military aid. Yes, more military aid so Ukraine could defend itself against the invading marauders led by apparently a dying Vladimir Putin. Okay. And it was going to sail through. And then we had the little attention whore, Rand Paul, who, needed everyone to look at me. And so, as you know, our ridiculous parliamentarian rules allow for one senator to hold up everything, to hold up the works. Now, Rand Paul said that the reason why he was objecting to a unanimous consent, meaning everybody agreed that this money needed to go to Ukraine forthwith, immediately, now, he said he wanted an inspector general appointed to oversee the money. Except to say that an inspector general is always appointed to oversee foreign military aid money. It's built into the legislation and it's built into our system. So that was bogus to begin with. And then he actually decided that he would create an amendment, an additional piece of legislation to amend and add to the appropriation, which was fine. It was fine with everybody. No one had a problem with it. And then Idiot Boy decided that he was going to vote against his own amendment.
On behalf of myself and Leader McConnell, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to legislative session and proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 366 S4190, Senator Kennedy's bill on Ukraine oversight, that the bill be considered read a third time and the Senate vote on passage of the bill. Further, that upon disposition of the Kennedy bill, the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar 368, H.R. 7691, a bill to provide aid to Ukraine, that the only amendment in order be the Paul amendment, which is at the desk, that the Senate vote on the Paul amendment with 60 affirmative votes required for adoption.
That's his amendment.
That the bill be read a third time, and the Senate vote on passage of the bill as amended, if amended, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, all without intervening action or debate.
Is there an objection?
Madam President.
Senator from Kentucky.
Reserving the right to object, my oath of office is to the U.S. Constitution, not to any foreign nation. And no matter how sympathetic the cause, my oath of office is to the national security of the United States of America.
He is literally objecting to his own amendment. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's why you have to go through the rigmarole of the parliamentarian speak. I know it's boring, I know. But so how in the hell do you explain this to lunatic, fringy people who tweet that Rand Paul was right to object to his own amendment because they don't know that that's what he was objecting to? His own amendment. This was, first of all, there's oversight built into the bill. That's number one. Number two, his amendment was accepted. Schumer was up there asking for unanimous consent for the Paul amendment. And he actually objected to his own stinking amendment. Now, I don't know, but I'm going to flash you back to 2017 when we come back. I'm just going to play it cold out of the break, so make sure you're around for the beginning of the next segment. because this next segment's going to freak you out only because John McCain is alive in the clip. Yeah, he's alive. Because this is a flashback piece of videotape from 2017. This was a vote in the Senate to admit, to say that the United States doesn't disagree with Montenegro becoming a NATO nation. Now, all the other NATO nations agreed, so it was just down to us. Wait.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, March 27th.
Kentucky. I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, I note the senator from Kentucky leaving the floor without justification or any rationale for the action that he has just taken. That is really remarkable. That a senator blocking a treaty that is supported by the overwhelming number, perhaps 98 at least, of his colleagues, would come to the floor and object and walk away. And walk away. The only conclusion you can draw when he walks away is he has no argument to be made. He has no justification for his objection to having a small nation be part of NATO that is under assault from the Russians. So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin.
Now, that was 2017. That was John McCain when Rand Paul objected to the United States of America signing off, with 98 senators supporting this. The small little tiny country of Montenegro wanted, they had been the victim of a coup attempt, and they wanted to join NATO. All the other NATO countries, and now there's 30 of them, they all have to agree. It has to be unanimous. Every NATO member has to agree to admitting a country into the NATO alliance. And so it was time for the United States to sign off on Montenegro being part of NATO. And 98 senators agreed that Montenegro should be admitted to NATO, and the other NATO countries all agreed that Montenegro should be admitted to NATO. And so there you had it. Almost universal acceptance of Montenegro joining NATO, which they did. But now, Rand Paul was the only objection. The only objection. And yesterday, Rand Paul was the only objection to sending humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine. And in 2017, John McCain understood that Rand Paul was not representing the United States of America's best interests, nor was he representing NATO's best interests, because NATO had already decided to admit Montenegro. And then if you'll remember, when Donald Trump went to a NATO meeting, and you had a video of all the NATO presidents and prime ministers in a room, and Donald Trump pushed aside a tall man with, a nice head of white hair. That was the president of Montenegro. Vladimir Putin has been pissed about this tiny little country called Montenegro, where you can now travel freely, becoming a NATO member. And the only senator in the United States Senate that objected, as well as Vladimir Putin, was Rand Paul. And the only senator yesterday that objected to Rand Paul's amendment to include an inspector general, which is already included in the oversight portion of the aid package, but he wanted another amendment to, state the obvious yet again. And the Senate said, fine. Introduced Rand Paul's amendment, asked for unanimous consent to Rand Paul's amendment, and the only objection to Rand Paul's amendment to send aid to Ukraine was Rand Paul. Go explain that. Mitch McConnell is the other senator from Kentucky, and he was on that bill. He was for that bill. He was a co-sponsor of that same bill. something really ugly is going on in that Rand Paul world. So I just thought I would bring that to your attention too, because guess what? Rand Paul is up for re-election this here year. And see you next Tuesday really means see you next Tuesday, because next Tuesday there are primaries in Pennsylvania and Kentucky. Charles Booker would be my pick for Kentucky.
You know, the more I learn about Rand Paul, the more appropriate his neighbor punching him has become.
Well, I'm not for violence of any sort or any kind, but I can see why he infuriates people. I could just say it that way. He's infuriating. He makes no sense. He has no arguments for what he's for or against. It's like he's an attention whore is the way that I think of him. But I don't know who's paying his freight. I don't know who's making donations to him. I do know he's up for re-election this year. And you just know that money is going to be everything, or has been everything for him this past 2 years, getting ready for his re-election. Now in Pennsylvania, this is going to be a strange day too next Tuesday. Pennsylvania is the Republican and the Democratic primary for the senator and the governorship of Pennsylvania. And you know that Dr. Oz has been chosen.
I am the chosen one.
By him as his endorsement pick. And it looks like the polling doesn't look very good for Dr. Oz. It looks like the people of Pennsylvania have figured out that Dr. Oz lives in New Jersey, votes in Turkey, and is running for office in Pennsylvania, and they aren't down with it. They're not good. And so there is this really radical, right-wing, lunatic, fringy, ultra MAGA, ultra QAnon lady that lost last time she ran by 20 percentage points, who is now only 2.3 percentage points behind Dr. Mehmet Oz, who lives in New Jersey, votes in Turkey, and is running for office in Pennsylvania. Her name is Barnett, and I have to tell you that even Fox News is saying you can't choose her in the primary, PA. You can't, because she will lose. She's just too out there. She's too fringy even for us. But they held, they let a supporter of hers, a former Philadelphia Eagle, you probably know this guy, Brett, endorse her yesterday.
So you disagree with this massive concern that's being raised that she cannot win a general election. Obviously, the Republicans can't lose this seat. This is a seat they should win. Your contention is that despite all this stuff bubbling around, that she can win this Senate seat and go to Washington and fight for America First principles. Is that where you're contending?
I'm telling you, right, you'll see historic black women voting for a Republican in Pennsylvania like you've never seen. You'll see people like me. I'm a former Philadelphia Eagle. I'll be on the ground campaigning for her. We will have a landslide victory because we will go in and get the minority vote like no other Republican has ever done in the state of Pennsylvania.
Do you know Jack Brewer?
No, I'm not off name recognition alone. I don't.
So how much weight could he possibly have?
Exactly.
Okay, so here's the deal with this woman. Okay, she is one of the original birthers. She's anti-Black Lives Matter, and she's a black woman. She's against Black Lives Matter. She is a birther. She believes in the QAnon conspiracy theories. She is telling everybody on the campaign trail that the election was stolen, and she's anti-Muslim. She was for the Muslim ban and a whole host of other really sick psycho, thing. Sean Hannity slammed her, said that she was, anti-Islam, anti-Muslim. Rick Grinnell, who's the former Trump acting intelligence director, called her unfit for office. Now, the reason why they're speaking out is she said pedophilia is a central tenet of Islam. This is the kind of crap this woman says. And they're saying, please, don't make her the primary, winner. Please don't do that because she's unelectable statewide. And guess what? John Fetterman, the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, he will probably be able to beat Dr. Oz. He will probably be able to do, he'll definitely be able to beat this woman. But he would probably be able to beat Oz. But, they're saying, no, don't vote for... Hey, listen. Want to do something fun? Go vote for her. Go vote for her on Tuesday in Pennsylvania. Her name's Barnett. Sorry. So, next week should be a whole lot of fun. A whole lot of fun. All right, go feed your babies, everybody. Have a good weekend. Thank you for donating and supporting the show, which I know you're going to do right now at RandiRhodes.com.